Welcome everybody to Spiritual Matters Thursdays. I'm your host, Dr. Monica Ogando. Today we're talking about how can water fasting assist you in your spiritual life. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Have you ever heard of water fasting? Have you ever done water fasting? What's been your experience with that? As background, as I take off this little random piece of hair from my face, um, as background, I have been a faster. I have been fasting regularly in my life, in my spiritual practice, since my 20s. So, 3 weeks, for many, many years, for many, many decades. And it is an opportunity to, when you fast, when you abstain from food, and in some cases, even water. I've done that, and we'll get into what that means in a little bit. When you abstain from food, a lot of stuff comes up in your life, in your social circles, in your energy field, etc., that you wouldn't otherwise be aware of unless you removed yourself from. Right? So let's work on our assumptions for this conversation first. The first assumption that I'm making, that I'm inviting you to make, and or perhaps that you've already made, is that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. How many of you have that assumption about yourself? Okay. The second assumption is that there are ways that you can, I'm not sure why this blurry, don't be blurry, don't want. Okay. The second assumption is that you can use your body and your physical world to impact your inner world, your spiritual world, and vice versa. As above, so below, as within, so without is part of that. That's the universal law that speaks to that. And in as much as your spiritual self is the creation space for your reality is also a feedback machine for your internal world. Right. And so by the time that you have some level of physical ailment or disease, et cetera, it's showing you what's going on in your authorship, in your creational world, in your imagination, in your insight, in your thinking, in your mindset, so that you can go back to the workshop, as it were, and change some things internally so that some things externally can also change. And to the extent that the external doesn't change, there's a purpose for that as well. I'm going to get into that. What is the longest, put it in the chat, what is the longest that if you've ever done water fasting, what's the longest that you've done it? I'm very, very curious. What's the longest that you've done it when you've done water fasting? If you've ever done water fasting. If you haven't, just say, I've never done that. Put that in the chat. Okay. All right, fantastic. So the longest that I have done a water fast is 60 days. And that's with meals sometimes in it. So for what I've done in the past has been, I've done 40 days complete, consequent 40, 40 days of no eating. I've also done 60 days and any manner in between, 47 days, 50 days, whatever, of going 7 days of no eating and then eating one meal a day on a Sunday, let's say. And what that has been able to create for myself, my own experience, has been an opportunity to connect to my own intuition, an opportunity to connect to how I use food to numb my emotions or to distract myself from my thinking. To use food and any manner of things that I consume through my mouth, like, desserts, drinks, etc., um, as an excuse for social distraction, right? And when I have removed them, I have to think more deliberately about how to do those social interactions. It can't just be a breakfast meeting, a lunch meeting, a dinner meeting, or whatever. Usually because the other person is much more uncomfortable with the fact that they'll be eating alone, like I'm just gonna be there talking but not eating. And sometimes that's very uncomfortable. People like, I don't want to be the only one eating. Um, and so we have to be more deliberate and more conscious and intentional about how we create connection now that we can't use food as an excuse, right? Um, from a pragmatic perspective, from a pragmatic perspective, when you subject yourself to a certain elongated period of abstaining from food, your body is first, your body thanks you. Your body's like, oh, finally, I have some time to get rid of some of these toxins and old cells and et cetera, et cetera. So it does a lot of like cleanup, decluttering, spring cleaning, as it were, inside of your own system. Sometimes that doesn't feel good because sometimes in the cleanup, as you've probably imagined, when you're in your garage doing some decluttering, it looks like a mess first before it starts looking organized and tidy. And so sometimes that happens to our bodies as well. And sometimes we'll have toxic symptoms come up, body odor, funky breath, or, extra sweating or no sweating at all, or whatever. Your body does a manner of things because it's processing through the toxins that now it has a chance to process because you're not constantly feeding it food. The reason why that matters is because when we are eating, digestion, digestion takes up a lot of energy that the body then now, because you're fasting, can direct to healing and clean up and so forth. Okay. So on a pragmatic level, that happens. The first 3 days, let's say that you stop eating on Sunday night dinner, that's your last meal. Let's, for the purpose of this exercise, right? So Monday, when you wake up, depending on when you went to sleep, you've already been fasting for about 12 hours, right? If you go the whole day, Monday, of not eating, by the time that you wake up on Tuesday, you will have fasted for 36 hours, right? And if you go through the next day on Wednesday, you will have fasted for 72 hours. So, um, this is an opportunity for you to notice what happens when you get hungry, when you have hunger signals. I always say to people that talk to me about fasting because they know that I've been fasting for years, so they always ask me questions about it. How long they should do it, if it's the first one. And I always say, if you're only going to do 3 days, you might as well not. Because the 3 days is the time that it takes for your body to prep through to the deeper cleaning and the deeper healing that's going to happen. It takes 3 days just to get set up. If you're going to get set up and then bring the stage down, just don't do it, right? So by the time that those 3 days have passed, 3 or 4 days, depending on whether it's your first time, your relationship to food, and whether you have any kind of attachments to certain substances like sugar or salt or fat, etc. Then by the time 3 or 4 days go around, the hunger pangs are gone. And you no longer feel hungry, you just feel empty. There's a difference. And you get to be with, wow, I have all this time now that I'm not thinking about what's for breakfast, what's for lunch, what's for dinner, meals, cooking, prepping dishes, or going somewhere out of my way to go buy something on the way to the office or to work or to a meeting, et cetera, et cetera. You begin to realize how much of your mental load, not just your physical existence, is taken up with food. So now that you have all this time and energy that you don't have that you're now not devoting to food, now what? What's available now? And what I have discovered is that in the absence, food sometimes covers up some energetics that we haven't dealt with. So sometimes fasting will reveal your boredom or your sadness or your anger, loneliness, resentment, confusion, and back to boredom again. And so it is very tempting that you go through and you touch up the hem of the garment of that feeling, of that emotion, and you're like, this is horrible. You're horrible. Let me go get a cookie. Let me go get, a meal. This is for the birds, or I fasted long enough, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to implore you that when you decide to do a water fast, however it is that you decide to do it, whatever your doctor tells you to do, etc. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not giving you any kind of advice. I'm just sharing with you my experience. But I'm going to implore you that when you come up with certain things in your body, like hunger, decide that your response is going to be curiosity and not resistance. Just decide that from the outset, that you're going to get curious about what your body signals are showing you or teaching you about yourself. One of the things that I have learned in my fasting journey is that you are built for survival. Your body, your physical body, the reason why we have the reflexes that we do, why we have the instincts that we do, why we have the autonomic and parasympathetic systems that we do inside of our bodies is so that you don't even have to think about survival. It's the reason why you've been breathing all this time since you got up this morning, and even before that, you've been breathing and you haven't had to think about it. Perhaps the only thought that you've had about breathing is because I just mentioned it. Right? So you have some systems that are built for survival that you don't even have to think about. They're just manufactured and stuff. And so the same thing that happens with water fasting, that if your body ever gets into the place where it's like, oh, well, now my livelihood, my survival is at stake, immediately it'll kick in the hunger instinct again after a certain amount of time has passed. Once those 3 days are gone and the hunger disappears, because the hunger at that point is really just your stomach doesn't have anything to move through. So it doesn't send ghrelin, which is the hormone that indicates hunger, back to the brain and etc. Once that's gone, then you can go for weeks without eating before you get into starvation mode. People say, I'm starving all the time. No, you're not. No, you're not. What it is that you're hungry or you're feeling like a peckish and you want a snack or whatever. You're not starving. And by the time that you get to the point where your body's like, uh-oh, we're about to starve, it kicks in the hunger pangs again. That is a signal that it's like, oh, okay, I'm finished with my fast. It's time to eat again. And there's a protocol for easing into eating as well. Because believe me when I tell you, after you fasted for, 14 days, 21 days, 30 days, 40 days, or whatever, you do not want your first meal to be pizza, ice cream, and wings. Do not do it to yourself. Oh my gosh, you will suffer. So, I always recommend that when people take themselves through a fasting period, that you keep a journal or a voice memo of some sort or whatever, because some things will come up. Eventually, after about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, that first week, at least my experience has been that after like that first week or whatever, it's almost like I get so clear in my thinking and economical with my words. So much so that the way that I speak sometimes feels like oracular, like scripture, like I'm, just dispensing wisdom, like the oracle in the Matrix kind of deal. Um, and so use that. Use the fact that you now have unfettered access to source because you've freed up your physical being to be able to now get some downloads, get some insights, get some lessons, work some stuff out in your own life. You might not know what to do about your son situation or your daughter situation or your marriage or the career situation or whatever the case may be, and then you get an insight, you get a download. Sometimes you'll have um a moment where you want to work through a particular emotion. Let's say, for example, this has happened to me before, where I feel compelled to work through a particular anger episode. Not because I feel enraged, but because it's like I sat there long enough to know that anger was sitting with me. It doesn't feel like a temper tantrum. It feels like a, a coming home to myself and seeing what's there. Like when you go to when you're traveling out of town and you go to the hotel room and you just check the bathroom and you check under the bed and you check what's in the drawers. Did they put a Bible here? That like that kind of thing, like checking in with yourself, right? And so there have been times when I recognize that when all is said and done and when the food has disappeared and when I'm just sitting with my own thoughts and feelings, oh, there's anger here. Okay, well, how are we going to alchemize this? How are we going to move through this? What is it here to teach me? What am I angry about? Maybe there's been some resentment about division of labor in the marriage, or maybe there's been some resentment about abundance, and I still have to work through some limiting beliefs about money or about my ability to produce or to generate or to receive, even. I know that when I had a partner going through this with me, which by the way was amazing cool points. If you ever want cool points, this is for the men. If you ever want cool points with your lady friend, you volunteering for suffering or volunteering for discipline is an amazing turn on. I'm just gonna say that. Okay, do that with you what you will. But when he said I'll do the fast with you, I was like, what? He got so sexy to me all of a sudden. And for him, it was his first time doing that, and because he had never fasted for that long. And a lot of stuff came up for him that he didn't know what to do with. But because I have fasted for years, I was like, let's just sit with it. He felt threatened by it at first. He was like, well, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? This is what you do when you're fasting? Yeah, but you're safe. Let's just sit through this. And it was such an amazing invitation of depth and of intimacy to be able to sit with sadness. Because here's what I know about anger. Anger is typically a proxy emotion. And anger is really your self-advocacy. Your self-advocacy when it's not so polite. What you're angry about is usually a boundary that has been broken, an expectation that has not been met, a disappointment that has not been expressed, uh, um, a self-respect or a sovereignty rule that has not been respected. And then your anger flares up to say, hey, something's wrong here, right? It could be about social justice. It doesn't have to be about you. It could be about the world or whatever the case may be, but it's usually one of those things. And underneath that anger is a sadness of not being seen, of not being valued, of not being connected. So all this stuff comes up with fasting, which is why people don't do it so often, because it's easier to just kind of like get on the hamster wheel and just, do your little checklist. It's easier to do self-care, to think that self-care is about lotions and potions and massages and, mimosas on Sundays and a cute little outfit for your girlfriend breakfast and da 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 da. Self-care is also about being with the ugliness, being a steward of your own wisdom, and creating the environment, whether in your body, in your home, in your relationships, etc., creating the environment where you can be fully self-expressed. And when you are fully self-expressed, you pay prices. And you want to be the safe space where those prices can be paid for your ascension, for your elevation. I'm not saying avoid the prices. I'm saying when you pay those prices, whether it's, the relationship changes or you change jobs or you change the way you eat or whatever the case may be, that you are the safe space where those prices can be paid. Rashida, you have your hand up. Unmute yourself, dear.
Grand Rising. I am so happy that I am here this morning with you because I just started my journey. Yesterday was my first day of my 40 days that I do. This year will be my 34th year of doing my fast. And I am so proud of you that you just really nip it, like what they say, nip it on the butt. It's a journey that only when you live it, you can really dictate, and you cannot even tell people what you go through. And mind you, I'm going to roll back the tape. Last year, I was fasting, like every year, I fast for 40 days, fast so many years that for me is just a mindset and a must to do. And last year, I start my fast and my sister passed away. And it was just I went through a rude awakening. Rude awakening. When I say a rude awakening, it was like such a pain, and it's like I didn't know what to do. I had to travel to Costa Rica and travel to Costa Rica. Remember, I'm not eating anything. I'm drinking because that's how I keep my body hydrated,
Yeah.
And I went to Costa Rica and came back, still fasting. As a matter of fact, I was like 2 weeks into my fast. So, I have 4 weeks more to go. And when I came back, I was so vulnerable. I was like so transparent that I have, no kidding, I have a spiritual attack in my bedroom one night that the following morning I could not even stand. I could not even stand. And some people say, quit your fast. Why you start to fast? Why? But it was my growth and my awakening that there is something more powerful in our body. That's mindset and that spirituality connection. That's what I have to go through, was to go through the other side. Mind you, I say this and I emphasize in this because in fasting, for me, is a lifestyle.
Sure.
But it's a growth in spirituality and knowing myself and connecting to my soul.
Sure.
Yeah. Because people will like, oh, I'm not eating for 40 days. And it's not my problem anymore to digest any intake because I am on a different journey and my consciousness and my awareness and my being. It's been so strong that when I come out of the fast, nobody can touch me. Nobody can touch me.
Yes.
But it's a preparation that you got to go through and a
That's
journey that you got to put yourself through. But I am so happy. Dr. Ogando, thank you so much for the points. Thank you so much for instilling the strength and the journey that I have to go through.
Absolutely.
I have 39 days more to go.
Yes. I'm with you, my fasting sister. The 40-day club is nothing to play with.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's awesome. Coach Ingrid, come on back. Come on in.
Hey, Grand Rising.
Hello.
You know how they say things, the universe sends to you things that you are putting out there, right? So as we know, yesterday was Ash Wednesday and the beginning of the Lenten season, where we normally do, well, I have in the past also do the Daniel fast. But I want to ask you, do you only do water fast? Or have you done other types, or do you incorporate other types of fasts?
time in my 20s when I dated a Muslim man and I did Ramadan with him. And the Ramadan, as you may know, is no eating or drinking from sun up to
Yes, I've
sundown.
been contemplating doing Ramadan with one of my sister friends for a couple of years now.
And the idea behind Ramadan is that you know, it also creates empathy for other people who don't have ready access to food in that way. So it takes your mind off of it. So I've done it that way. And then there have been times when I've done just fruits or just vegetables, or just fruits and vegetables. But I would consider that more like a cleanse than a fast in a way. I have also fasted from vanity because I have a potty mouth. I don't know if you guys notice, but sometimes it slips in, even in this Spiritual Matters Thursday. So sometimes I've done a profanity fast, and you know, and then I go back to regular consumption.
Okay.
So I've done that as well.
I find when I
can interject.
My dreams are more vivid. My dreams
Yes.
are so clear.
Yes.
And it's like I am really experiencing this. It's like, it's not like, okay, what did I dream? It's like everything is so crystal clear and it's more spiritual. And I usually do it like around this time during the seasonal change of spring and cleansing and new growth and stuff like that, because stuff comes to you and like you hear stuff, you just, it's like you become more observant.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me speak for myself. I become more observant and my dreams come so very vivid. But for the past week, I've been thinking, okay, what type of fast am I going to do this month? And I'm kind of toying with it now. So I've basically been like eating like early before sunrise, almost like around after sunset, and drinking liquids in between, teas and waters. And thank you for this topic today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can interject. Okay, for my journey of fasting, I have done, I would say almost everything. As a health coach that I am, I do 1 day dry, 1 day wet. And when I say 1 day dry, nothing 24 hours, nothing 24 hours. And the next 24 hours, I would do tea, I would do water, lots of water, lot of tea. If you want, you can put in smoothie into it. And I do that in the midst of, I would say, 1 day dry, 1 day wet, 1 day dry, 1 day wet. But what I, for the consciousness that I live by, I do 2 days dry, 2 days wet, 2 days. So I eventually implement 3 days dry, 3 days wet. It's a powerful journey of doing it. But the mindset is that you have to have that mind so clear that, and mindfulness, because then remember, having 3 days of not drinking anything, putting anything to your mouth, your lips them get dry, your mouth get dry, but your mind gets so powerful that people like, wait a minute, what is going on? But you got to face it. But that's what I can say is, and also I would say is only tea. And what I do my last 2 weeks of my fasting, I do colon cleansing for 2 weeks. So I go to the colonic hygienist and I do 2 weeks of colon cleansing. So I take her, because remember, once you fast, your body break down a lot of garbage in it. So you got to get it out, because that's why when people say, oh, people who fast get sick. Oh, people who fast get sick. No, we don't get sick. We don't be mindful that we got to get rid of all that toxin and all that thing what the body break down. Your body shed it. Every garbage that is there, because remember, it has time to rest, it has time to think, it has time to work, it has time to do a whole lot of journey in that 40 days, that week. Not 3 days. Please, anybody going to do 3 days, I shoot you. Not good.
Thank you, Rashida.
Not good. Thank you so much.
It's funny. Chase asked, I want to fast again. Is a 14-day a better start, or go to 30 days first? Start with 14. And then when you get to 14, then you check in with yourself, how you feel and how it's happening for you. And then if you decide to go the full 30, then go the full 30. But at least you've completed the 14. And I think, you know, a part of it is accessing your own wisdom. part of it is you being the author of your own experience and understanding what your inner wisdom is opening you to. And please understand how countercultural this is. We live in a culture, in a conversation where we're looking for external validation all the time, where we're like, when you want to do something, the first thing that you do is Google it to see what somebody else said about it. And I'm going to invite us all to start exercising the muscle of checking in with your own authority. And at first, that may be just getting used to what your inner authority sounds like. You may not even know what it sounds like to check in with your own inner authority, or feels like. Sometimes it's not a sound, sometimes it's a feeling. But it's an opportunity for you to be the whole journey of sovereignty and of authenticity. Authenticity, the word authenticity has the same etymological root as the word author. And so for you to be authentic requires that you are aware of and empowered by how you author your own experience of your life. What you say goes. And that you are already your own inner authority. You may not be aware of it, you may not give yourself credit for it, but you are already operating from your inner authority, whether you listen or not. And so fasting is an opportunity to remove the distractions and the physical temptations that would otherwise direct our attention towards your own inner authority. And the trip ups that happen along the way is an opportunity, is an invitation for you to clear the path to your own understanding. So thank you, everybody, for spending a few minutes past our time here together. I love you. I thank you, Ingrid and Rashida, for your contributions, and the rest of you for being here in this conversation. Remember to love generously, to laugh, to get yourself at least 6-7 hours of sleep. I'm going to tell you 9. Okay? You might not be able to get 9, but aim for that. Drink your water. Eat more plant-based food. Exercise. Remember that twerking is a Kundalini raising exercise. Give of yourself, of your time, your energy, your attention, and of course, audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. And we'll see you next time. See you later.
Thank you, Doc.